this will be the 8th year that we're gonna have a different champion in the NBA. Have you
Hmm.
ever thought about that, man? It's crazy.
Yeah, it's a parody era. Like,
The San Antonio Spurs going against the New York Knicks. Rematch from 1999 when these teams face each other. Spurs won 4-1, and that was a shortened season. But we talking about two teams that I think have captivated an audience due to the players they have and the story, and then the coaches. We got Mitch Johnson taking over for Pop. You got the redemption arc for, in a way, for Mike Brown, who this is the first time as a head coach in the finals since '07. There's a lot of things that's going on, but let's just focus on one team at a time right now. Let's start with the New York Knicks, who have experienced a long layover, but it's all worth it. What do you think is their keys to victory in order to beat the Spurs? The Spurs team that knocked off the defending champs.
I think one of the main keys is going to be the help side defense of OG Anunoby and Mikal Bridges and Josh Hart when it comes to containing the guard play of the Spurs. Mitchell Robinson, like he did, that is going to be like a thing to look out for when it comes to his pinky. Now he did have surgery on it, and he is expected to play through it this series. So when it comes to containing Wemby, I think he's gonna be one of the main factors because he's their primary defensive and rebounding big. He has the kind of like size when it comes to like his sturdiness that can kind of like push Wemby around a little bit. So I think they're gonna have to use that on the interior, and then like I said, the help side defense of Anunoby, Bridges. They're really gonna have to communicate to be able to cover for the liability of Brunson because the athleticism of Harper, Castle, and De'Aaron Fox. That can definitely create some problems on the defensive end for Jalen Brunson and being able to tire him out. So. It's definitely going to be imperative for the Knicks to be able to communicate on that defensive side of the ball. And Cat, he's really going to have to, he's definitely going to have his hands full with Wemby, but he's definitely going to be having to communicate and be talkative, when he is out there on the defensive side of the ball as well. On the offensive side of the ball, I think the Knicks, they've been an absolute machine on the offensive side of the ball throughout the entire playoffs. So like I think San Antonio defensively they have been very good this year, and obviously Wemby, is the defensive player of the year. But I do think that the Knicks ball movement can present some problems for San Antonio. So the Knicks are also going to have to play with a lot more pace on the offensive side of the ball and really be able to, wear out Wemby because, especially as we get this deep into the playoffs, possibly see some signs of fatigue from Wemby. We even saw it at times during this series. So I do think that the Knicks are going to have to play with pace on the offensive side of the ball in order for them to wear San Antonio out.
Yeah, that was going to be my point as far as the Knicks keys. Get Wemby, Stephon Castle in foul trouble. You that push the pace, led by Jalen Brunson, who knows how to get downhill and stop and pop, and get to the free throw line, things of that nature. Because we seen like when they get in foul trouble, they gotta play differently, and those guys gotta come out. And when they come out, you take advantage of that because Wemby's gonna be a nightmare for
Mm-hmm.
the Knicks. Like that matchup is scary. But speaking of which, I was thinking about this. I want to get your take on it. Because Wembyama, he is the guy that's going to get zeroed in on. But if you're the Knicks defensively, do you let Wemby go off and stop the other guys? Or do you stop Wemby and dare the other guys to step up? Like, which route do you think they should take?
I think you should mainly try to contain the other guys actually because I think most of the time when Wemby has had those kind of monster games, I think the rest of the team feeds off of it. Like, when Wemby really has it going offensively, it just seems like they just have an unbeatable aura. Like when it comes to, when Wemby has those kind of monster games where he's just attacking on the offensive end and he's aggressive. I think you have to really try to contain a lot of the others, trying to turn the ball over from Stephon Castle because Stephon Castle, like he had issues with turning the ball over against Oklahoma City. So I think when it comes to containing the guard play of San Antonio, like I think, Bridges and Anunoby and Josh Hart, I think those guys are really going to have to try to force, the guards to really turn the ball over. And De'Aaron Fox, he can be kind of hot and cold offensively. There's times where he's really gets to go on offensively, and there's times where there's times during the playoffs where he's had some really rough shooting outings. So you have to so the Knicks really have to kind of try to force him to take force those guards to take tough shots, and then try to see if they can force him to turn the ball over. So I mean, it's really I think you really have to focus more on trying to contain their guard play.
I wouldn't let Wemby go off too much. Like, far as like scoring, okay, he can get like a bucket or two, but definitely got to limit his impact on the boards. Definitely got to limit his shot blocking abilities too. So where those they get off on those plays too. They get exciting plays. He block a shot, push it down. They push it down court. They get an and one. So if I'm the Knicks, I'm like, can these other guys beat me? Like you said, Stephon Castle. I think he had like 10 turnovers in the first 2 games in the Western Conference Finals. Can you recreate that? Get him to turn the ball over 6, 7 times. De'Aaron Fox, like you said, he's in a weird position offensively. Can you force him to shoot from the outside so he won't use his speed to go downhill? Dylan Harper, yeah, he's playing lights out, but can he keep that up? Can he score 20 points per game? I think that's what it's gonna take. They're gonna really need his scoring prowess. So yeah, the other guys gotta beat me.
Mitchell Robinson and Cat, they're gonna have to really crash those boards. I think they're gonna have to try to push them around. Really, they're gonna have to try to they have to play with a lot more force. That's the only way they're gonna really have to try to frustrate Wemby, and they have to try to do that without getting in foul trouble. Now, we'll see like how the officiating goes. The deeper you go into the playoffs, they usually let you play a little bit more. So. I think that's what Mitchell Robinson and Cat are gonna have to do inside.
And then speaking of Cat, I think definitely is going to be more important offensively than Jalen Brunson, if I can say that. Not saying Jalen Brunson won't be able to have a great finals or something like that, but you talking about him going against the likes of Stephon Castle, Vassell can switch on him, De'Aaron Fox can switch on him. Like, they got bodies to throw at him. Like, the only person that can really guard Cat is Wemby. So if Cat can like get his offensively, pull Wemby out the paint, because Cat can knock down a 3 here and there, but don't rely on it too much. Hit a couple threes, maybe take Wemby off the dribble, dare Wemby to block his shot, get him in foul trouble. I think he's the most important person offensively for the Knicks. And it always kind of been like that ever since he's been there, because we know what a dominant Karl-Anthony Towns looked like. So can he bring that versus the defensive player of the year in Wembanyama? Would you agree or disagree with that?
Well, I would disagree in the sense that I still think Brunson is the key, but it's just that but I just think the difference is between last year and this year is that it's just that Brunson's just been doing a lot. He's just been a lot more balanced when it comes to scoring and playmaking. So, at the end of the day, when it comes to a lot of the big men, you still have to have a guard that's going to feed them the ball. So, I think what's happening is that Brunson and, Cat have kind of developed a lot better chemistry within this second year working together, and also within Mike Brown's system. I think they've been able to open things up on the offense. I think they've been able to open things up on the offensive side of the ball. It's not just getting Cat involved, but also get guys like Bridges or Josh Hart or whoever has it going that night. So I think they've found that kind of balance on the offensive end, especially within the playoffs. Within that, so Cat is flourishing through that, but I still think that Brunson is the main cog through that.
Oh, definitely. But I think that dynamic is what I was speaking to. I want to see more from the Knicks versus the Spurs, where you don't have Jalen Brunson so heavy on offense in the first half of the game. He can pick and choose a spot, set up his teammates. So when it get down to third and fourth quarter, he's fresh. He can close the game out, because that is the closer on the team. He is the closer. So you don't want him, like you were saying earlier, you don't want him to wear down, because he is that important when it comes to fourth quarter and crunch time. Now let's go on to the Western Conference champions, the San Antonio Spurs. We already know what their team is made of, but when it comes to a 7-game series in the finals versus the New York Knicks, who are hungry, been waiting for this spot, what do they really have to do in order to secure the finals win?
Well, I think for San Antonio on the offensive end, they have to avoid getting into those lulls offensively where they get a little too stagnant and to where they kind of just end up going a little too one-on-one. They have to stay, cohesive with their ball movement and yet still find their flow when it comes to, knowing when to get Wimby, his opportunities going and also letting the guards, do their thing. So I think they've found a great balance all season long and also getting the ball out to open shooters like Champagny and Devin Vassell. So I think really they're just gonna have to. I think on the offensive side of the ball, they're really just gonna have to keep the floor open through that dribble penetration. I think with Jalen Brunson and Cat with their both of those guys historically being defensive liabilities. I think there's going to be some opportunities to have some open floor opportunities when it comes to getting the ball out to shooters and also just, opportunities at the rim. I think, Castle and Fox, both of those guys can, get to the rack, very easily, like, with their quickness and their first step. So I think both of those guys can be able to attack the rim, and I think if they could just stay aggressive offensively, I think that's going to be the key. And I think that when it comes to Big Fella, I mean, I just think if Big Fella is aggressive and wants to dominate, then I think I think the Knicks could potentially be in for a long series because I think Wembanyama. I mean, he's just an absolute nightmare offensively when it comes to his skill. I mean, the way he's been knocking down threes throughout the whole playoffs. I mean, during the Oklahoma City series, he was just making he's making all kind of 3-pointers from deep through the face-up game. So I mean, you're seeing his growth. Even just during this postseason alone. I think on the defensive side of the ball. I think Wemby's going to lock down the perimeter, but I think knock down the interior, but I think they just have to not allow opportunities from New York when it comes to their shooters, when it comes to Bridges and Hart. Certain guys off the bench like, Deuce McBride, he's stepped up, Landry Shamet. The Spurs bench is going to have to really contain some of the shooters coming off of the bench for the Knicks because I do think the Knicks have a bit of an advantage on the bench.
Yeah, for sure. I definitely agree with that. I think the Knicks have the advantage for bench production. For the Spurs, one, got to be careful with the turnovers. Got to know how to handle the ball. Number two, I want to see them attack Jalen Brunson and Cat. Like you said, Jalen Brunson, he's not the greatest defender in the world. He's coming in at like 6 feet, 6'1", something like that. Very small. Then you got these athletic young guys. Don't be afraid to go at Jalen Brunson. Like I said, you got to wear him down. You got to tire him out. That's how you can beat this Knicks team. Well, one of the ways. And then number two, for Karl Anthony Towns, Wemby just keep going at him, get him frustrated to where he's going to make bad mistakes. Like, I still remember, I forgot what show I was watching, but they pointed out some of the defensive lapses Cat would got. Like, he won't pay attention to who's rolling to the basket. He'll lose that person, won't switch. He'll make a pointless foul just out of frustration. He get emotional. So test that. Has he actually matured from that? And will he actually hold it down mentally when it comes to this alien we like to call Victor Wembanyama? So that's gonna be the key for me for the Spurs. Just attack those two, see if they can step up defensively, and also like you were saying, or at least how you alluded to, like they got to hit those threes. They got to knock down threes. If they knock down those threes like they were doing Game 7, then that's going to demoralize the Knicks team, who you could get them out of character. Even though I think they stepped up a lot mentally. But also don't forget they didn't really face that stiff of a competition on their road to the NBA Finals. So it's going to be a big deal for them when it comes to the Spurs team.
I mean, I understand like what you're saying about the competition, but at the same time, like, when it comes to the point differential, the Knicks, like when it comes to like within the postseason, like, I mean, they are putting up some historic numbers on the offensive side of the ball. So I do like want to give credit to them in that sense, but when it comes to because even then San Antonio they did play a banged up Minnesota team in the second round as well, so we could and they also played Oklahoma City, who had a couple of injuries as well, so I mean we could also make the same argument for them as well.
Should be competitive basketball either way. Now for this next segment, let's circle the word legacy here. When you get a ring, that does something for your career where you can get more money, you can demand more money in all season, moves you up in the ranks. You have all more eyes on you. Let's talk about the Knicks 2 stars right quick. Karl Anthony Towns, Jalen Brunson. Jalen Brunson been ascending as one of the top players in the league, dark horse MVP candidate. Cat, since his Minnesota days, we always look at him as like one of the best bigs in the NBA, but he also, I think, is one of the most criticized bigs in the NBA too. So if these guys get a ring, what does it do for both these guys? Are we talking Cat like when it comes to him being a power forward? Is he like going to be like an all time rank, creeping in that top 10? Brunson, where do you put him as far as like his current standings in the NBA or maybe historically? Like, what do you think a ring does for these two players?
I think in regards to Jalen Brunson, I think one kind of like notable comments that was kind of like in the news, like I think within the last couple of years, was when Becky Hammond, said that like
Mm.
a lot of players of his basically a lot of players of his height typically aren't able to lead teams to championships outside of Steph Curry and Isaiah Thomas. And now typically, like, I actually normally would agree with that, but because historically there just hasn't been that many teams led by like this you know smaller guys of that sense that have really led teams to championships. But I think a ring for Jalen Brunson, and also for him personally. His dad played for the Knicks, and obviously his dad's also like an assistant coach on the staff now. He grew up, rooting for the Knicks. So like, for him personally, like, for him to bring the New York Knicks a championship ring, that would mean a lot to him. Obviously, it speaks for itself about what it means to New York City when it comes to winning the championship since 1973. And then I think for his personal legacy for Brunson, like I think it'll kind of validate him, like as far as you can like be a team that can be led by a guy, by like a little guy, so to speak, in the NBA, and still be able to lead a team to a championship. I think it also could establish him, when it comes to being an all-time New York Knick. I think winning that championship, if he continues, to stay with the Knicks, and let's say he finishes his career out with the Knicks, it'll probably be between him and Walt Frazier when it comes to the great all-time great New York Knicks, because now obviously Patrick Ewing.
I was about to bring up Patrick Ewing.
That I'm saying that if Brunson finishes his career out, because he still has to get the longevity there, because now Brunson's only been a Knick for 4 years. Like, we still got to give the OGs their respect in that sense. You know what I'm saying? Like, the Pat Ewings and Walt Frazier's in that sense. But I just think I'm saying that in the event that Brunson finishes his career out and he has a championship ring, that would put him above Patrick Ewing.
All right, all right. Yeah. I was pondering that too as you was talking. I don't know what a ring does for Brunson like all time when we stack them up against other point guards, because man, it's a whole bunch of point guards that it's almost
That'd be difficult
impossible
to
for him to
say.
leap over. Yeah, but as far as like him being like an all time Nick, like I think it'll definitely push him up there because he would do something even Patrick Ewing couldn't do. Deliver a championship to New York City. And he was the main call for that. So I think it does make him push into that like top three at least. Once he finished career out as a Nick, because nowadays you never know. He could end up getting traded
Yeah,
in
that's
2028.
yeah,
Yeah,
that's
you
true. It's
never
never
know.
a guarantee now.
There's never no, no. But what about Cat though? What you think this does for him? We talking about a player like on a historical sense, like should be like one of the best modern bigs that we have. And like I said, he faced he faced a lot of criticism. He's been through a lot. What happened with him losing 8 family members, including his mom, COVID. Like, what do you think a championship does for Cat's legacy?
Well, in addition to everything that he's been through in his personal life, like all the people that he's lost, I think career wise, I think one of the things is that, was notorious, or kind of like, a turning point in his career was probably, when the whole situation with Jimmy Butler was with Minnesota, where, he ended up, or, he was called, or basically he and Andrew Wiggins are basically called out, and where, Jimmy Butler and, basically all the, third team guys basically, dogged out Cat and Wiggins, and Cat's whole reputation around the league is like, yeah, he is a very skilled big man, and obviously one of the best shooting big men to ever play the game, but he has a reputation for, being soft. That's followed him throughout his career with the T-Wolves, and then once he got to the Knicks, for him, he's going, to play for, the team that he grew up rooting for. And I think he's been a polarizing figure even since he's gotten to New York, because, he has been a lightning rod where it's like, it seems like, when Cat plays well, that seems like the Knicks, they look like an elite team and they look like a contending team. But then when Cat has those, off games, that's where, that's where he can be kind of a lightning rod on the other end where, he can face a lot of criticism. So I think, for him getting a championship ring, really validates, it really silences a lot of the noise of the criticism of him being soft. And I do think, when it comes to like, all that he's persevered like off the court, like I think it has to speak to like, his mental toughness, and and how he's been able to, be able to, thrive on the court and really like you've seen a lot of growth from Cat even this year in the playoffs. You kind of saw it, towards the end, when they made a conference run the last year in Minnesota when he made a conference finals run. But I think this year in particular, it's like you're seeing him play with so much confidence. And I think that's really just been the difference, with the last couple of years is just like Cat's just playing with such different confidence, and like I think he really believes that he can be, integral part of that championship team. So, I mean, I think, winning a ring, I think for him personally, I think it'll really just, silence a lot of the critics. He will be, as time moves on, people will remember him more fondly as being, and he'll get his just due. Like, I think he's kind of similar in the sense to like, Chris Bosh. Like, remember Chris Bosh, got a lot of criticism when he was with the Miami Heat. And obviously the Heat were like a very like hated team during that time period. But then like now when you look back on Chris Bosh's career, and it's like you look very fondly on Chris Bosh's career, and you realize, oh man, like, he was a consistent 20 and 10 guy in Toronto. Even when he was in Miami, like he was the main guy that had to like he deserves a lot of credit for being the guy that had to sacrifice a lot of his numbers, and he made a transition to being one of the better pick and roll defenders. So getting that recognition as a champion, I think, will do a lot for him, and then he'll end up being remembered a lot more fondly, as time goes on, and even in the now.
You brought up Chris Bosh. I thought that was a good comparison, but another name that I was thinking about was Paul Gasol. When he arrived with the Lakers, I know you remember he had that same label too. Like people was calling him soft, even though he was a 19-9 guy. Then he got with Kobe. He had great plays, great moments, put up good stats, and they won the championship. They went to how many NBA finals? They went to 3. They went to 3 in a row.
Went to 3 straight finals and won 2 championships.
Yeah. So and then I think that translates to Cat too, where he came in with this labels being soft and people making these awful, dare I say, homosexual jokes about him, and then he get a ring, and that validates him throughout the entirety of his career. And I think people are going to look back at him like they now look at Bosh like they look at Paul Gasol. Like these players were great. They were like walking double doubles. They can pass the ball. They can go off the dribble. They do all that. And I think people are going to look at Cat the same way. Now, I don't know if the Cat will ever get like a top 10 moment or a top 10 ranking as far as like power forwards of all time. I don't know about that. But I definitely think that people are going to like appreciate what he has done and his stats and what he's been through. I would say this too on a personal level. He's like the number one player that I'm cheering for in the finals. Like if he get a ring, like I'll be, man. If either side get a ring, I'll be like happy because I'm a fan of these players and everything, and I'm pro player, but I think he's like the number one guy. Like if he get a ring, man, I'll be so happy for him. Now let's go to the Spurs side. Of course, the number one guy we're gonna be looking at if he wins the ring is Victor Wembanyama. Now I remember last time we had an episode here on the Floor Seats, we was talking about if SGA was the face of the league, if he get that ring, 2-time defending champ, obviously that's not gonna happen. And I remember I closed this segment out by saying Wemby is right behind him if he don't be careful. Now, if Wemby gets the ring, will he be that face of the NBA, even though he only completed 3 seasons?
I think yes, because I think what we're seeing right now is like even during this, because I think even during this Oklahoma City San Antonio series, like I think this series brought a lot of eyeballs, like even like casual viewers to the NBA that a lot of folks that didn't even necessarily wasn't watching the NBA all season long. I think this series brought like a new eyeballs to the television, and I think Wemby, with him being so tall and him being so skilled, like I think he's so fascinating of a player that we haven't seen before. So I think because of him, bringing that excitement, and like he plays with so much fire and he plays with so much passion and emotion, it's like like that he's gonna make people feel something when you watch him. So like when the guys that are the faces of the NBA, those are folks that make you feel something when you watch them. All that combined, with him, being this 7'5" stature, have so much ability. Like I mean, he brings the eyeballs to the television, and then he is from France. He still can articulate himself very well when it came to what he did on the defensive end and what he brought to the table on that end. So I think all that combined, I think Wemby winning this championship, especially like in his third year. Like we haven't like the only time I could think of like a young player like bringing a championship this young was like what Magic Johnson 1980.
Yeah,
Magic
yeah.
like Bird and Magic maybe like 1980,
Yeah.
1981. Larry Bird second year. And Magic did in his first year. So it's like if you're winning a championship in your third year, it's like I mean you're doing something that a lot of the all time greats never did.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And I agree with you 100%. I said it last time, I said it again. When we win the championship, he is the face in the NBA. And not only that,
Hmm.
this is who we want in the player when we watch. Like you were saying, like somebody that gives us that feeling, he embodies all that. He's passionate about the game. He's very competitive. He don't do none of those nonsense comparisons. Like we poor Chet, poor Chet. But
Oh
and,
man,
and he's on a
just embarrassed
franchise
him.
that's, yeah, just embarrassed him, man. He's on a franchise that people have heralded, held to a high standard. Remember that at one point the Spurs were the standard of the NBA, and for him to bring that feeling back and more, and have all eyes on him, he's definitely going to be the face of the NBA. But I will also say he's under a lot of pressure because his soccer team, Paris Saint Germain, just won yesterday. They just beat
Oh yeah.
Arsenal in the shootout. Yeah, 4-3 in the shootout. So he got to bring it home for France too.
And,
Got to make France go
and,
crazy.
and we do have the World Cup coming up too now.
Yeah, yeah, there we go. Yeah, yeah. So yeah, I think this be like a perfect storm for Wemby as making his case as the guy in the NBA. Now, I would say in order for a ring, yes, but also we got to see him win the MVP too. Like
Hmm.
they also got to happen. Like I don't think you could be a true face in the NBA without an MVP to your name. I hate to do this to you, man, but we are in the world of sports, and part of sports is predictions. Even though these matchups are tough, we got to make a choice here. NBA Finals 2026. Got the Spurs. We got the Knicks. Rematch 1999. Who are you taking? How many games? And who you think the MVP will be?
I think
It
this is gonna be this is a very tough choice.
is. It's very tough.
It's a very tough choice. I think very highly of both teams. I am gonna go New York City. The Knicks are gonna bring home a championship. The Knicks will win this in
Hey,
7 games, and Jalen
hey,
Brunson will be the MVP. The Knicks will find a way to
hey.
pull it out. I think that the perimeter defense of Anunoby, Bridges, and Josh Hart, I think they'll be able to give some problems to San Antonio's guards. And I think they'll be it. And I think over time, I think if they can get Wemby worn down within a 7 game series and they can make this series stretch out, I think over time, I think the Knicks, their fourth quarter prowess will be able to take them home and be able to bring it home in 7.
I think kind of the most deserving player of the ring between the two teams, De'Aaron Fox. My goodness, when you go through it with the Kings, you just go through it and
Oh
you
man.
escape. Yeah, this winning the ring is gonna mean the world to this guy. And then of course Wemby, one of my favorite players, but I gotta go with the Knicks too. I think I'll go back to one of your points, the bench production. Like, who can I trust if my star can't bring it? If my do I have another player that can get a shot on his own? We not just bench, but like the other guys like OG, Mikal Bridges, Josh Hart. Then you got Alvarado coming in for the defensive side of things. So I think I could trust that supporting cast more than I can trust the Spurs. Now, I know we have all pointed to like them being young, not being there before, and they kind of shut us up by being the Oklahoma City Thunder. But also, you gotta look at like the coaching matchup, like Mike Brown. Like, yeah, this is the first time as a head coach being in the finals since '07, but only he was with the Golden State Warriors that whole time, or pretty much almost all that run. So he knows what to do as far as the X and the O's. He know how to get those guys ready. And then I'm very impressed by Mitch Johnson.
Hmm.
I think he has a great, influence on his team, but I think Mike Brown has the advantage in that as far as experience, like what to do in those moments. And then, like you also pointed out, Victor Wembanyama can get worn down. Like I seen he was I forgot who he was. He was like bent over on the guy holding his shoulders, trying to just stay up during the timeout. So it's gonna be a lot for him, and can he handle that? So uh I got I got the Knicks. I want to say 6. And then I got, you know what? I'm gonna roll with Cat for MVP.
Okay, all right, Cat MVP. All right,
Yeah.
I like the story. I like the story for Cat.
Oh yeah. Oh, definitely, definitely. Jalen, it's hard to. It's even hard to choose that because I'm pretty sure Jalen Brunson is gonna have his imprint all over the game. Like I could see him like 8 assists, 25 points, something like that. 8 assists. That should be MVP. But also, I'm just thinking about the different looks that could throw at him. Would he be, that effective efficiently for the team as far as like scoring wise? But I got the Knicks, but I would not be surprised if Spurs won. But I think if the Spurs win, they'll win in 7.
Like Spurs win, they win at home. Knicks win, they win at home in 6.
Yeah, yeah.
Gotcha.
We seen
Yeah, man, it's gonna
once
be a
you up
fun
3-2,
series,
close it
man.
out.
Like I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely, absolutely. But that's our NBA Finals special here on Stacey on Sports. The floor seats here on YouTube. I'm Stacey Carter II, joined by Randall Hamilton. Follows everyone on social media at Stacey on Sports. This is kind of the last episode ish for the floor seats, but I mean, we still got free agency to look forward to. We got the NBA draft, of course. We're gonna have a handle on those, but it's all about the NBA Finals right now. It should be a great one. Everybody enjoy watching.